All righty, fasten your seatbelts, here we go. It is time for another information-laden episode of the Town Meeting Program, your local talk show on KLAM, brought to you by Cordova Wireless Communications, your local cell provider, which provides this show and supports many of the things that we do here on local radio. All of that while keeping the dollars that you spend with them in town so they recirculate and keep us afloat. Not a bad strategy, particularly in these pandemic times. This is quite a pile of papers, and we're going to go through it. We'll be talking about the joint session coming up at 3 this afternoon between the City Council and the NVE Tribal Council, and some of the things that they'll be going over. That includes exploring some of the provisions of the Alaska Small Community Emergency Travel Order, which can't be applied to Cordova, as we learned this week. It can't be applied to Cordova in its entirety, but there may be some things that can be surfed out of it and applied to Cordova by local authorities. They can't apply it to travelers, specifically local people. Local authorities can't apply these provisions to travelers, but might be able to apply some of them town-wide. And then there was some guidance for sport and personal use and subsistence fishermen that came out, and they're going to possibly look at that and discuss it. We'll go over it again here in this show. We're also today going to get a look at the just-released City of Cordova Harbor Operations COVID-19 Plan, which is still a working document. It's not written in blood, but we'll give you an idea of what's been done by the incident management team to address harbor concerns. And we'll also go over, in cursory fashion at least, the Trident Seafoods plans, which are public documents. They turned their plans over to the city for publication on the city's website because they wanted the public to know what they're doing. So we'll kind of go over those a little bit. And then some information from the Coast Guard regarding how they consider the pandemic and their response. And you know, obviously, Coast Guard's a big deal for us, so we'll see what they have to say about it. So that's what's on the agenda here. First and foremost, though, I know it may be a little weird to hear somebody say that they're really excited about the outcome of a city council meeting. It's been known to happen. It doesn't necessarily happen a lot, but I got to tell you, after listening to yesterday's meeting, which you can hear on our YouTube channel if you want, youtube.com/Cordova TV. I was really enthused and came away with a great sense of hope with regard to more robust communication between the city and the incident management team and the public. They have heard the voices of people who have been saying, we want to know more about what's going on. I mean, we keep hearing the city's doing this and the city's doing this, but we never hear anything about it. I know I've been squawking that through my bullhorn, and it's been, the notion's been all over. And that word has gotten up the chain. And the city recognizes that it's time to step up the dialogue with the public. I mean, you know, those of you that listen here know that we tried. We actually arranged to set up daily meetings with the mayor, weekly FAQ sessions with the incident management team, and, you know, that sort of died as soon as it started. But they've made some big changes. The incident management team has made what I would consider significant improvements to their information exchange with the public. The city has actually gone as far as to obtain the services of a professional PR operation that has experience taking information that a city, that a governmental body needs to get out to the public, and helping them to do that in a way that gets correct information out there, avoids incorrect information getting out there, and strikes that balance that I've been praying for between everything having to be absolutely perfect before anybody says anything public about it at all. You've got that extreme on the one hand, and then the other extreme, which is that people just throw information out willy-nilly, and it might be right, it might be wrong, but hey, at least we're telling people something. That's both of those extremes. Particularly throwing out a bunch of wrong information just to show that you're, saying stuff just for the sake of saying stuff, that's dumb. But it's, as we've seen, it's also not helpful to wait until everything is in its absolute perfect final form. There's a balance in the middle there that I've been pushing for, which is to even if we can't share all the details, let's at least share with the public what's happening, what's being done for them, what is in progress. And I have the highest degree of hope that I've had throughout this thing that that's going to start to happen. So I was really glad to see that take place in yesterday's meeting. By the way, something else on our agenda, and it's going to be the grand finale today. I'm going to share a clip from one of the council members that I think is one of the best things I've heard a council member say in council comments since I can remember. The always telling it like it is, Councilor Glason. I want you to, in case you missed it, I want you to hear the comments that he made, and we'll do that last as our big finale for the end of today's show. But it was great to have Mayor Copeland on yesterday's daily briefing again, and not just be, telling you something myself. And I think we're going to have a lot more participation as a result of these changes to the communication protocols. So big thumbs up to everybody who thought of that. Special props to the city manager for the idea to use this PR firm. And again, retaining a PR firm is not a smack in the face of our local PIOs, public information officers. It's simply a recognition that this event is bigger than volunteer public information officers can possibly be expected to handle. I mean, at the state level, there are full-time public information officers, people who do this all day, every day, all throughout the year, and they sometimes struggle to get it right. So there's simply, no matter how intelligent a person is in general, you can't expect people who are only public information officers when there's a major incident and on top of that, they have other jobs. You can't expect them to, just jump right in and be off the charts amazing. I mean, lightning can strike and it can happen, I guess. And, Kathy Renfelt and the other people who have been taking on this extremely challenging role have been doing a pretty good job, I think. But it's just too much to handle if it's not your full-time job. And so now the city has got experts on the team who will open up the valve more on public communication. And I'm thrilled about that because information is key to keeping people informed, giving people confidence that their authorities are working for them, and avoiding panic and rumors, because we've seen where panic and rumors have been taking us lately. So thank you, city manager, and anybody else who was involved in broadening the communication. Now, today at 3, April 16th, City Council joint work session with the NVE Tribal Council. That's at 3 p.m. on the 16th, and it will be on YouTube. It doesn't look like, because it's a work session, it doesn't look like there's a public comment part. I don't know if they'll throw one in or not, but I wouldn't expect one. And the work session is going to be about ideas for working together and sharing resources during the pandemic, and then possible discussion of items in the Alaska Small Community Emergency Travel Order as it was amended, and the April 13th Fish and Game press release allowing for limited but not unrestricted travel between communities for sport and personal use and subsistence fishing. Now, regarding what they want to discuss about that Alaska Small Community Emergency Travel Order, remember that's the attachment B. It was the focus of that petition drive, which has basically been, the petition itself has been invalidated because of how this was amended. The city can't apply attachment B in its entirety anymore because we have a critical access hospital. And that's what changed in the amendment. So Cordova can't just declare itself a small community and put all these rules in place because we technically aren't under this definition, under what the definition of a small community is. However, as the city attorney said, and as members of council have said, there are some provisions in here that could be looked at individually and possibly implemented. And that might be a discussion during the joint work session, emphasize might, during the joint work session at 3. And again, Cordova would not be able to implement any of these things just on travelers, because the state has said you can't single travelers out and make them do things in this emergency order just because they're travelers. But the attorney did say that some of the restrictions that are suggested in this document could be applied in general, possibly, to everybody in the city. Like, for example, a possible requirement to wear face coverings. There could be limiting of access to laundromats, grocery stores, gas stations, convenience stores, hardware stores to certain hours of the day, prohibiting the entering of residences that are not your own lodging. We're not supposed to do that anyway, but there could be a provision that makes that actually a rule. Attachment B had a provision to require businesses to provide their plan for quarantining their own personnel that might get sick. I think a lot of our businesses have been doing that anyway, but again, it's a good idea that could be made mandatory. So there are a number of things they could look at in the travel order, which again, they can't all be just automatically applied, but they can look at some and see maybe if it's a possibility. By the way, one of the doctors that was online in yesterday's council meeting answered a question that I've been wondering about, because we know at the state and local level, anybody that's showing symptoms of COVID-19 is required to stay home and not work and not, if you're showing symptoms, you're supposed to go home and stay home, with the only exception being to get essential medical care. All of these things about essential workers and outdoor recreation and all that doesn't apply to somebody who's showing symptoms. But I always wondered what happens to somebody who's got symptoms. How do they know when they can go out again? And the doctors answered that. Unless I misunderstood, it was 72 hours of being symptom-free. Then a symptomatic person would be able to participate in things the way that non-symptomatic people are. There's still the social distancing requirement and all of that, but there's a special restriction on people that are showing symptoms. And the way that special restriction loosens a bit is when a symptomatic person has gone 72 hours after their symptoms are gone. In other words, you got to feel normal for the 72 hours, and then you can sort of rejoin society, for lack of a better way of putting it, under the rules that apply to everybody who doesn't have symptoms. So that 72 hours, that's a good number to keep in the head. Let me say, too, while I'm thinking about it, this is a bit off topic, but we'll get back to today's scheduled workshop. Another thing they talked about in yesterday's meeting that I thought was good was more talk about getting personnel to potential hot spots. For example, the volunteers at the airport handing out literature and making sure that incoming travelers know what the quarantine rules are. And again, big trophy to those folks, because they just took it upon themselves to provide that education and that extra layer of protection for the town. And somebody, I think it was maybe a caller, mentioned how it might have been in Dutch Harbor or one of the other towns where there was actually a police officer at the airport handing out flyers, which seems like it'd be a good idea. I don't know if we got anybody we can spare here, but having somebody in uniform adds some gravitas to that. It's sort of like having police patrol the post 9/11 arrival and departure area. It makes you a little less likely to just leave your car, where if the police aren't there, you think, I can break the rules and get away with it. So I don't know if it's possible for us to do that. I don't know if we can deputize. Can we deputize? But anyway, maybe having, if there's any way, and there again, for the harbor, somebody suggested as an idea whether or not the Coast Guard could maybe assist with patrolling or passing out information or something, which I have absolutely no idea if they can do, but these are just thoughts that were shared that struck me as good things to explore. So that idea of finding these places, might be grocery stores, might be the post office, harbor, airport, these places that are more likely to have people coming in and touching things that should be quarantining, that either need to be careful or maybe shouldn't even be there in the first place. Having officials, if we can, or at least volunteers at those places, that continues to be something that comes up, and we'll see how it develops. So back to the meeting today at 3 p.m. One of the other things they might discuss is this new document that came out regarding sport and personal use and subsistence fishing and how those activities relate to what's called Health Mandate 12, which is the one that says you're not supposed to travel from community to community within Alaska except for critical personal needs or critical infrastructure. And this document that came out April 13th sort of, in essence, made the point that fishing, not just commercial, but again, sport, personal use, let's just call it non-commercial fishing, I guess, for the sake of simplicity, is allowed. You can go from community to fish, provided you follow some specific guidelines. So I'll read this to you again now, this news release that came out on the 13th. Fish and Game is informing the public that Health Mandate 12 on intrastate travel says all in-state travel between communities, whether resident, worker, or visitor, is prohibited unless travel is to support critical infrastructure or for critical personal needs. Sport and personal use fishing have not been identified as supporting critical infrastructure or a critical personal need. The purpose of this mandate is to control the movement of individuals to communities within Alaska in order to prevent, slow, and otherwise disrupt the spread of COVID-19. Although travel between communities is prohibited under the health mandate, the public may still travel to fishing locations. When traveling to participate in sport or personal use fisheries that occur outside of their communities of residence, the public must follow these guidelines. Number 1, try to find the resource you intend to pursue as close to your home residence as possible. So in other words, say people from Valdez should not come here. They should find places to fish in Valdez. People from Fairbanks shouldn't come here because there are other places to fish that are closer to Fairbanks and so forth. So you're supposed to try to find something as close to where you live as possible. Number 2, find out local mandates in communities through which you plan to travel before you leave. You must abide by them. Number 3, totally provision your trip from your community of origin. Don't plan on buying food or drinks or even fuel, if possible, after you begin your trip and until you return home. Number 4, practice social distancing while sport or personal use fishing with anyone not considered part of your immediate household, including while traveling from your community to your fishing location. And number 5, wear face coverings as suggested in Health Alert 10, which came out April 3rd. So again, to kind of summarize, people that don't live in our area are not supposed to come here to fish if they have somewhere to get the same fish closer to their home. Anybody that tries to come here from somewhere else needs to know what our rules are and follow them. They're not supposed to be bringing their potentially viral selves into our places of business. They need to social distance from anyone not in their household, and they need to mask up. Seems like a decent set of guidelines. Last paragraph of the news release. Adherence to these stipulations will allow Alaskans the opportunity to fish and put food on their tables while taking measures to protect public health and allow time to build needed health infrastructure. Please adhere to the stipulations to ensure these opportunities can continue. And actually, I heard an interview with Fish and Game, a deputy commissioner or somebody. I don't remember who it was. It was a Fish and Game official that said, you know, if people don't follow these rules, they will consider shutting sport and personal use fishing down, or making it so you officially cannot travel to somewhere else to do it. That only people in the local communities would be able to harvest the local resources. So, this issue, possible implementation of some of the provisions of the emergency travel order that the city would be allowed to, and cooperation between the city and the village of Eac, those are the subjects of today's joint work session with the Tribal Council and the City Council. That'll be at 3, and you can watch it on the city's YouTube channel, which I find easiest to access by going to the city's website, cityofcordova.net, and you'll see a link to City of Cordova YouTube channel that you can just poke, and there you go. This is the Town Meeting Talk Show for April the 16th, and a big area of interest for members of the community has been what's going to happen in the harbor. Is anything being done by the city, by the incident management team, to focus on a harbor plan? Now, of course, that focus has been going on for weeks, but there hasn't been any information publicly released about it. And I think, again, there's an increasing recognition on the part of the council, certainly, and possibly the incident management team, that it's okay to give people progress updates. A thing doesn't have to be perfectly, entirely finished in order for the public to know what's going on, as long as they are very careful to specify when something that's a work in progress is a work in progress. And by the way, when the city officials make a gesture like that and say, we're going to show you the work in progress, it's not done, it could still be updated and probably will be updated as things change. When they put that on the table, please don't respond to that by tearing them a new one over something that you see in their working document that maybe isn't the way you think it should be. Absolutely bring it up. Absolutely contact them. Absolutely share any concerns or something. But stop with this, you idiot. How can you even think that that's the right way to do it? How can you say that? Finger wag, blah, 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 because that's the kind of behavior that prevents working documents from being released to the public. And I don't know that anybody has done that as a result of this harbor plan being public, but I have sure seen it happen in my almost 30 years of observing city council meetings on other issues. There's just no point in ripping public officials a new one when they're in the process of working on something and maybe there's a thing in their working document that could be improved. So please don't anybody do that. Because I, for one, don't want to lose access to this information. So working document here now. City of Cordova, Harbor Operations, COVID-19 Plan, which, by the way, you can download from the city website now and take a look at. Here's what it says so far, not in final form. Commercial fishermen are included in Alaska's essential services and critical infrastructure and are encouraged to fulfill their role in the healthiest manner possible and follow all state and local mandates. There is a state requirement to submit a travel plan or protocol for maintaining critical infrastructure and a city requirement where you sign and submit a Cordova Mutual Aid Agreement for large or small operators depending on crew size. Harbor rules. Cordova's entire harbor is considered a hot zone, meaning everyone should assume anyone on the docks might be a carrier of the COVID-19 virus and take appropriate precautions, that is, social distancing of at least 6 feet, frequent hand washing, and wearing a protective mask. That's like the preamble. Rule number 1. Prominent COVID-19 signage will be posted throughout the harbor, including ramps and public areas. Individuals without business on the docks will be discouraged from entering. Rule 2. On entering the harbor, all vessels must contact the harbor master or, if after hours, police dispatch to register arrival. Rule 3. Information packets will be handed out to vessel operators and placed in weatherproof stations in the harbor for pickup. Rule number 4. Cordova Emergency Order 2020 mandates 14-day quarantine upon arrival from all in-state or out-of-state locations. People may quarantine on their vessels or in other locations. Vessel crew will be allowed to travel from their place of quarantine to their workplace. Vessels in quarantine will be asked to fly a flag that indicates quarantine status to other harbor users. As a mandated critical industry, boats and crew in quarantine will be allowed to work on vessels and gear and to access necessary supplies and services to operate. And vessels may use transit time toward 14-day quarantine, provided no one disembarks in a port of call. Now, again, if this is hard to listen to on the radio, you can download this. Rule number 5. To ensure compliance, all vessels will be required to maintain a logbook detailing vessel travel, which may be spot-checked by the harbor personnel. Number 6. Masks are required when walking the docks or ramps in the harbor. Number 7, hand cleaning stations will be installed at the top of every ramp to encourage hand washing protocols. Sinks with knee valves, soap dispensers, and pump sprayers to disinfect surfaces with chlorine have been ordered. Rule 8, nets and gear may be repaired on the docks with appropriate social distancing and adherence to the mask rule. Rule 9. Harbor Master Office will not accept packages for pickup by the fleet. Other arrangements must be made. And finally, Rule 10. If any vessel crew needs EMS services, call to coordinate with EMS and EMT first, then dock the vessel at the inner harbor boat launch so EMS can serve the crew member there. Once EMS leaves, the vessel will be required to go to the far end of the transient float, and the crew will remain on board the vessel and await instructions. Next section of this City of Cordova Harbor Operations COVID-19 plan has to do with fleet services. Item 1 is bathrooms and showers. Harbor master showers and bathrooms will be open and subject to more frequent cleanings. Disinfectant spray bottles will be available for users to spray surfaces before and after each use. Additionally, the harbor will close the bathrooms for an hour every day to use an ozone generator for complete disinfecting. Then it also says the pool is closed for swimming, but the bathrooms will be open on a schedule and process that is still to be announced. The facility has UV lights for daily disinfecting, and disinfectant spray bottles will be available for users to spray surfaces before and after each use. Also under fleet services, item number 2, ramp, crane, docks, grid, and travel lift will be open as normal for use by the fleet. However, to accommodate health mandates, scheduling may be required. Cleaning supplies will be supplied for high-touch areas. Now, not that you asked my opinion, but this sounds like, at the very least, a very good start. And it answers a lot of the questions that people have been having, which is why I'm glad they got a working version of this out. And this is why I want to emphasize again this meeting in the middle between the officials and the community is so important. If the officials can be reasonably certain that the public is going to look at these things, recognize it's a working document, and can have more suggestions added to it, or even things deleted as they come up, that there can be dialogue on it. As if it's reasonable dialogue, then a working document like this, just keeps getting better. But if people are jerks and start saying, you take that out or I'm going to sue you, or whatever pitchforky stuff, that kind of thing is going to work against us being able to learn about stuff that's in progress. Incident management teams are very, very cautious about not putting things out in their final form. Cordova's made it clear that most of us would like to be able to see things in progress. I know I'm in that group. But on behalf of the team, not that they asked for it, but I just really want to encourage people to approach them reasonably with suggestions and not treat them like they're stupid for not knowing some idea that you think should be in there or putting something in there that you think shouldn't be. If you yell at them, if you call them Nazis, if you call them jackbooted, whatever, they're not, that's not what they are. They just aren't. So let's make sure nobody treats them that way. Because they've been working on this for hours and hours, and it's like I say, at the very least, it's a good start. Now, processors have been a big area of interest, to put it euphemistically, to Cordovans. And Trident Seafoods not only has put out a plan so extensive that there's no way I could read the whole thing to you, but they have made it public. It's not something that they're required to do, actually, but Trident very much wanted to, and so they are treating their plan as a publicly available document and encouraging people to download it and read it. And you can get it from the city site. They've actually made it available for downloading from the city website, cityofcordova.net. So just to give you an idea of some of what's in here, sort of an overview, They say the purpose of this plan is to provide insight to Trident's comprehensive approach to COVID-19 prevention. We're committed to the safety of our employees, fishermen, stakeholders, and communities in which we operate. COVID-19 prevention training will be provided to all employees and will include staying put, meaning knowing local ordinance and restriction policies, staying clean, following sanitation procedures detailed by the quality management team, staying safe, practicing social distancing, hand washing, and other preventative skills, and staying healthy, performing daily temperature checks and health assessments. Under the heading of security, access to all locations will be permanently closed and guarded. Location boundaries will be clearly marked. Housing and galley will be restricted to employees only. There will be increased monitoring of the dock and around the plant to secure boundaries. Deliveries will be monitored and directed to specific delivery locations. Under employee policy, employees will be restricted to plant property. The plant manager will authorize a limited set of trained personnel to leave for supporting services outlined below. Violation of this policy will result in employment termination. All terminated employees will be immediately sequestered and directly returned to Anchorage or Seattle. Under the heading of fishermen and tenders contacting the plant prior to arrival, Trident says all paperwork and thumb drives will be delivered directly to a designated area. Dock and plant access is limited to employees. All others must stay on the vessel. Gear movement, storage, and deliveries must be prearranged with plant personnel, and items will be always attended. Essential contractors must check in daily with security and agree to be screened each day before entering plant property and always wear required personal protective equipment. Contractors are required to bring their own mask, face shield, and gloves. As far as site management, environmental changes and sanitation protocols per CDC and Trident have been made to ensure proper person-to-person management. Designated van drivers will support collection and delivery of freight and mail. Employee airport transportation, additional stops will not be supported. And all vans are equipped with a safety divider. Then there's a full page here on symptoms and illness procedures. Daily employee health checks and temperature scans will be performed. Licensed medical personnel will staff the plant clinic. Any employee presenting with a temperature higher than 100 degrees will be further evaluated for COVID-19. If required, transportation to Anchorage for a higher level of care will be provided. And if COVID-19 is confirmed, the employee will be placed in isolation and asked to identify recent contacts. 14-day quarantine will be required for all asymptomatic incoming employees not previously quarantined in Alaska. Isolation housing has been established for incoming employees. Bunkhouse managers will be identified for each location and group to ensure strict adherence to all policies. If shared bathrooms are required, separate shower schedules and protocols will be followed. Daily sanitation protocols will be posted and followed per CDC guidelines, and meals will be prepared and delivered 3 times a day using disposable service. 14-day isolation for symptomatic employees not diagnosed with COVID-19 will be provided with separate bed and bath accommodations, policies enforcing 6 feet of separation. Meals will be prepared and delivered 3 times a day with disposable service. Laundry will be collected in color-coded bags and managed separately by housekeeping. Any meals, clean laundry, or packages delivered will be placed on a dedicated table outside each room. Garbage will be collected in color-coded bags and handled separately. And a negative COVID-19 test must be obtained before returning to work, subject to availability. The next section is isolated for confirmed COVID-19 positive cases. They will be housed in a facility with separate bed and bath accommodations, policy of 6 feet of separation, And actually, a lot of this is similar to the previous section with laundry and meals and garbage and so forth. In the event of death, first notification will be to 911. The remains will be collected by the local police chief or the clinic. If autopsy is required, the state police will be contacted, and Trident protocols will be followed in the event of any death. Fishermen or tender crew that become ill or have injuries will follow these listed protocols. Serious injury, an ambulance will be called to the dock. Minor injury or illness, individual will be sent to the local clinic. Designated dock personnel in full PPE gear will be available for support. And then they mentioned this Cordova location services part earlier in the plan. They say for the Gillnet fleet, for part and grocery orders, Trident's rules are call-in orders accepted by phone, email, or radio to the South Plant, and pickup and delivery will be done via tenders. For the Seine fleet, part and grocery orders, call-in orders accepted by phone, email, or radio to the North Plant, with pickup and delivery area being tenders again. Fishermen's paperwork should be taken care of by email or USPS before arriving in Cordova. Paperwork will be delivered outside the office, and all paperwork will be handled with gloves. And then for transportation, vessel crew need to make personal transportation arrangements from the airport, and personal vehicles must be delivered to the airport before arrival. Now, there's one other piece of this that's short enough to cover here on the show. Again, to give you an idea of the work that's being done, at least by Trident, to deal with the coming season. They call this one Cordova Vessel Operations Guide 2020. It says Trident Cordova is committed to safe and optimal operations for the 2020 summer season despite the significant challenges we're faced with. Our top priority is the health and safety of the communities in which we operate, our employees, and our fishermen. The following procedures are effective immediately. For communication, all communications must be conducted by phone, email, or radio. Regarding dock access, master and crew must remain on vessel while docked. Social distancing to be practiced with dock personnel. Dock time must be scheduled in advance with dock foreman. Vessels may tie to the Trident dock to obtain freight and nets, and supplies and nets will be lowered to the vessel by the dock crane. Regarding vendors, mechanics, or local resources, these folks will not be permitted to board vessels from Trident docks. The plant or fleet manager approval must be arranged in advance, required for any exceptions. They say for parts, groceries, or freight, contact the expediter. Parts and groceries for pickup to be ordered by phone, text, or email. Give the list to your tender. Orders delivered by outside parties must be left at the designated drop areas. South Plant located, well, and then this gets into some specifics, but the point is they have drop areas for that. It says all orders to be delivered via dock personnel or tenders to fishing grounds, and contact designated expediter or dock foreman for freight drop-off. Regarding office procedures, it says prior to commencing fishing, contact the office to ensure complete account setup and knowledge of procedures. For fish tickets, the captain or permit holder must prepare necessary information for preliminary fish ticket submission, forms available at the dock. Permit cards, paperwork will be transferred at the dock to designated personnel for office submission and completion of fish tickets as needed dependent on fishery. All final tickets will be returned to vessel for signature, landing info, thumb drives depending on fishery. And all current regulations still apply. Valid permit card required or offload can't proceed, and all fish tickets have to be signed and submitted to ADF&G. And then they list a whole bunch of contact information on this document as well. And then, as I said, they've got a much larger document, which is many pages. It's the Coronavirus Disease COVID-19 Response Plan. There's a lot of information in there. So if you've been curious about whether processors are preparing and how, Trident at least is out there on record publicly. I mean, they put their documents right out there. You can download them from the city. All right, moving on to our next topic. In case you hadn't seen or heard about this, the Coast Guard put out a Marine Safety Information Bulletin, actually back on March 9th, but this is the first I've seen of it. So here's what they're saying. Well, part of what they're saying. Some of this doesn't really apply to us, but this is from the Coast Guard. An outbreak of respiratory illness caused by a novel coronavirus, COVID-19, may affect mariners and maritime commerce. The CDC has updated their interim guidance for ships on managing suspected coronavirus disease. And then there are some links in here. Illness of a person on board a vessel that may adversely affect the safety of a vessel or port facility is a hazardous condition per Coast Guard rules and must be reported to the U.S. Coast Guard captain of the port. Cases of persons who exhibit symptoms consistent with COVID-19 must be reported to the COTP. Per the rules, vessels destined for a U.S. port are required to report to the CDC any sick or diseased crew or passengers during 15 days prior to arrival at the U.S. port. Guidance to vessels to report deaths and illnesses to the CDC can be found online. U.S. flagged commercial vessels are also advised to report ill crew members in accordance with the requirements of any foreign ports called on. That doesn't really apply to us, but you get the idea. Now, there's some stuff in here about foreign, like Iran and China. But past those bullet points, it says the Coast Guard will continue to review all notice of arrivals in accordance with current policies and will communicate any concerns stemming from sick or diseased crew or passengers to their Coast Guard chain of command, who will coordinate with local health authorities. Vessel masters shall inform Coast Guard boarding teams of any ill crew members on their vessel prior to embarking the team. Local industry stakeholders, in partnership with the Coast Guard, should review and be familiar with procedures for vessel quarantine and isolation and procedures for security segregation of vessels in their Area Maritime Security Plan. Local industry stakeholders, in partnership with the Coast Guard, should review and be familiar with their Maritime Transportation System Recovery Plan. Maritime facility operators are reminded that they are not permitted to impede the embarkation or disembark of crew members as permitted under Seafarers Access Regulations. This authority resides with CBP, Coast Guard, or the CDC for medical matters. Facility operators should contact their local CBP, Coast Guard, or CDC Health Department offices regarding specific questions or concerns about their individual operations. So no surprise, they're paying attention to this too. So how was that for plenty of paperwork to go through? Now, I promised you a grand finale. And obviously, with the grand diversity of human thought in the circle of life, I realize there may not be unanimous consent that this is one of the more awesome council comments made at a recent council meeting. But since I'm the host, I get to decide that it is awesome, and I get to play it. So with no further ado, we present to you these thoughts from Councilor Gleason.
I would make one comment about Cordova's past history with some pretty bad stuff. In my lifetime anyways, we faced botulism. For those of you that have lived here long enough, you will remember what that was. It was canned salmon. Somebody died from it, and then nobody wanted canned salmon. And, it literally tore this town in two. People moved out of town. A warehouse was burned down. There was I myself followed Beaver Nelson around in a jitney and did donuts in his seine every set, trying to scare fish out of his net because he was a scab. And we went on strike, and it just tore this town up. And then we had the oil spill, and that was devastating. We still are facing repercussions from that with no herring fishery. And people have to remember that was a third of this town's income. That was a huge hit. One thing we didn't have in those two instances was Facebook. So Facebook does damage that we have a really hard time controlling. And I would caution people about what they're writing in there. And I would also caution about the personal attacks on people. We can't control what people write, but you certainly can as an individual. And we're gonna survive this, and we all have to live together on the other side of COVID-19. And I hope that people aren't losing friends over being on one side or the other. I disagreed with Councilman Meyer on Ordinance 1186, but she defended her position better than anybody else could have. And I appreciate that. She's a smart councilwoman, and I appreciate that. Even though I don't agree, I still appreciate that, and I appreciate her being on council. So we can disagree and still get along. So my advice is please think twice before you start attacking people on Facebook. As far as my comment about how history judges us, whether being part of the solution or part of the problem, City Council and the IMT are included in that also. I guarantee you we will be judged more harshly than anybody else. And I was making that as a general comment, not attacking people for writing letters or sending suggestions into City Council. I read them all. And I personally get letters from people that I've known for a long time. They don't really have a lot of good things to say about what I'm doing, but a lot of this stuff is generated by fear, and you get a pass for that in my book. This is something we've never dealt with. We've never dealt with something like this before. Everything else we could see. It was in front of us and we could deal with it. We can't deal with this like that, and I'm still hoping to be friends with all those people afterward. I don't hold any animosity against them and I read their stuff. So we just gotta make a good effort to get along through this. We're finally coming together as a team with City Council and the IMT as these incidents happen, just like the oil spill. People were out on their own personal boats taking oil out of the water with 5-gallon buckets because they didn't know what was going to happen, and nobody was telling them what was going to happen. That's what happened during the oil spill. The same thing's happening here. People are coming forward, and in my opinion, that's what makes this community great, is that people come forward. They're out at the airport. They're volunteering on their own. That has since been incorporated into the IMT, and it's a big help, and I appreciate what they're doing. I guess that's all I got. Hopefully I'm not stepping on people's toes, but that comment wasn't directed at you, Luke, so don't stay mad.
And there you have it. I don't need to elaborate on that at all. Thank you, Councilor Gleason. Thank you to all of the people who are continuing to work to figure things out, and my personal special thanks to all of those who are finding ways to make more information shareable, even if it's not entirely done yet, but sharing of the works in progress so that we can see what's going on, comment where necessary. Please, God, help everybody to remember to be kind and wise and thoughtful when they interact with people about working documents. Amen. And we look forward again to increasingly better information flow with the daily briefings, with this show, Maybe we can even get the FAQ program Friday afternoons rolling again. As always, anything that we do regarding this situation is archived on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cordova TV. And we want to thank Cordova Wireless Communications for sponsoring this show. Can't do it without them. Can't do a lot of our stuff without them. We're going to bring you all of the special programming that got pushed back because of this program. We'll have our daily briefings for you coming up later in the 1 p.m., 5 p.m., and 8 p.m. hours. And don't forget that joint workshop at 3 p.m. between the City Council and the Village of Eac Tribal Council. That's at 3 p.m., and you can watch it on the City YouTube channel, accessible through cityofcordova.net. Thanks for hanging in there today. It was a marathon, and we'll see you for the next town meeting here on KLAM.